I didn't know about depression. I didn't know that it was even an illness. I thought just it was the way you felt because of something you did wrong in your life. And I was just wondering, like, well, where did I go wrong?
People of faith understand that life is a sacred gift, but life brings many complexities that can often be difficult to navigate. Youth are especially vulnerable and need our support to offer them hope. Approximately 20% of teens experience depression, and a teen takes his or her own life every 100 minutes. To learn how faith communities can help prevent youth suicide, we welcome Heather Steward Freed, a licensed social worker and director of programming and communications with Erika's Lighthouse in Winnetka, Illinois. We also welcome Chaplain Kent Svendsen, pastor of the United Methodist Church of Plano, Illinois. Chaplain Svendsen has taught suicide prevention training as an Army chaplain for 15 years. Heather, what's the mission of Erika's Lighthouse, and what are the different organizations that you partner with?
So just to give you a little history, Erika's Lighthouse has been an organization for about 10 years. We got started when a young person in our community took her own life. She was an 8th grader at a local middle school, and she was a normal kid. She had friends, she danced, she was funny, and no one in our community could have ever thought in a million years that a girl like that could lose her life to depression. And it really opened up a conversation in our community around what is depression and why aren't we talking about it. And what we discovered was that it's really very common. About 15 to 20% of young people before they reach adulthood will struggle. We learned that it was the #1 risk factor to suicide. And so really what we initially started to do was focus our education efforts in places where kids were, schools. You know, we have a captive audience, and we really worked hard to get our programming into health classes. In the first few years, we focused on getting our programming in middle schools. We do a lot of programming now in high schools. And really anyone who touches a child's life, we try to educate. So we offer programming to faith-based communities, parents, other professionals, and really the goal is to educate, advocate, and eliminate the stigma that surrounds depression. Because although depression is really common and extremely treatable and serious, as we know, it can lead to serious consequences, one of the biggest obstacles is stigma. And it's the embarrassment and shame people feel who go through it, if they're lucky enough to even know they're going through it, because, like I said, it's just a topic a lot of people are uneducated about and don't talk about. So we're really trying to raise the awareness and just get people talking about it like they would any other disease, like you would talk about heart disease or cancer or diabetes.
And Chaplain, what's your current project? How are you involved with teen suicide?
Well, we develop a video that would talk about what happens with people that become depressed, and talks about some of the functions of how to recognize and to help people that have been suicidal or are suicidal.
And Heather, what are some of those red flags, some of those things that families or people that work with teens should be looking for when they're looking for people or teens struggling with depression or at risk for suicide?
I think people who are at risk for suicide, obviously the #1 risk factor is mental illness, untreated and unrecognized mental illness, and the most common is depression, especially for young people. So really that's why we focus on educating people on depression. So what you're looking for is a change in moods, a change in thoughts, and a change in behavior. It's really hard to recognize for outside people, so we encourage people to talk about how they're feeling, but you know, change in moods are anything from sadness to irritability, especially in young people. I think we try to look for that Cymbalta commercial, you know, the kid that looks mopey and, you know, can't get out of bed, which can totally be a young person with depression. But for a lot of kids, it's anger, it's frustration, it's irritability, it's feeling like you just want to crawl out of your skin. And that's the mood change we see often. In terms of thought changes, you'll hear people talking about just not feeling good enough, feeling worthless, inappropriate guilt around things they shouldn't be guilty for. People with depression often apologize for things that they shouldn't be apologizing for. You know, we'll see behavior changes like people not eating as much or eating too much. People sleeping too much. I work with kids who, you know, on the weekends will sleep for 16, 18, 20 hours and still feel tired. I also work with kids who have depression who can't go to sleep at all, and then they get to school the next day, and of course they're sleeping in class. They can't stay focused. They can't concentrate. So trouble focusing, motivation, fatigue, those are all signs as well. And then of course the obvious one, which is any kind of talks about self-harm, thoughts of death, plans for suicide. Those are the big ones that I think we're all really kind of hypersensitive to. But it's those subtle, other kinds of changes that people don't necessarily think about and talk about. And a lot of times with young people, those are some of those changes are a part of their development, like being irritable or not wanting to talk to your parents, or even acting out, testing boundaries. So I think parents and a lot of us have trouble kind of navigating, well, what's normal development versus when someone's really hurting and in crisis. And so a part of what we do is really empower people to speak up and say something and let them know if you're feeling this way, you don't have to feel this way, and it's actually a disease called depression, and it's okay, and you're not weird or crazy or weak. You're someone who needs some help, and you should say something about it.
And why do you think it's hard for teens to come to adults and speak out about it sometimes?
I think developmentally, kids want to talk to their friends. So part of the programming that we give to communities is this language and is this message that if you're a friend who sees this in a friend, don't keep it a secret. So I think part of it's just developmentally what they do anyway, which is tell everything to their friends. So it's important that friends know what to do. But I think, depression's something that's starting to get talked about more in schools. There's more mandates from the state and federal level to do things in schools around mental health and suicide prevention. So I think kids are developing a better vocabulary around their emotions and what's normal and not normal, but a lot of times adults haven't caught up. The parents that are raising these kids don't have that same education. So a kid may come home and say, I watched a video at school, I think I may have depression, and a loving, caring parent who's just uneducated, no, you're not. You're having a bad day. Get over it. Let's go to soccer practice. It's just innocent ignorance, and I think kids feel shut down sometimes when they experience that, and that's when you start to see kids isolate more, withdraw more, and that's really what we're trying to prevent, this hopelessness, and really encouraging conversations.
And Chaplain, how do you think that the church has either helped or harmed the process of identifying at-risk teens?
Well, I think the issue is that we don't bring up the subject. And I think that's it's an important thing to do. There's kind of a taboo around it. One of the things that often I talk to people about, and especially like doing the video that I'm doing, it brings up the subject, so people often will have questions. If you just broach the subject, people may want to talk about it. For instance, some folks, they may see those examples that you're talking about of symptoms, and they don't know what to do because they don't want to make the matter worse. For instance, if you ask somebody if they're suicidal or they thought of harming themselves, you're not going to cause them to commit suicide. Right. What you're doing is giving them somebody they can talk to. Because even if they say no, and I've seen this in the past where somebody said to me, oh no, I'm fine, and then later on they came to me and says, I really do need to talk to you. Thanks for mentioning this subject so I can actually talk about it. And once you get people in dialogue, that's when you can help them, because those support systems are so vital. We need affirmation from other people. We need other people to be there for us and to walk with us. And when we do that, we find that there is a connection that's made that'll help save people's lives and to help them find some pathways, because oftentimes people don't get better because they don't know the resources that are available for them.
And Chaplain, what would you like to see from churches to better acknowledge and address this issue?
I think that it should be part of our seeking of social justice. I mean, social justice is making sure that everybody in our society has equal access to things and equal recognition. And I think this is one of those issues. It's that just like everything else, we put stigmas on all kinds of people and their actions and their thoughts and what they do. We need to push that aside and say we need to talk about this, because it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is not as worthy as somebody else. It just means they're going through something in which they need some help, and that should be what the church is about, helping people find wholeness in their life and healing.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Chaplain Svendsen, for sharing this really important message of hope for our teens. I'm Leah Smith for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.